Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another virtual program brought to you by the Mark Twain House and Museum. My name is Jody. I'm your host for the evening. Tonight, we are talking about the book Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do, by Tracy Dawson. The link to buy the book is at the very top of the chat. Just a few things before we get going. Many of you have found that chat on the side of your screen. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves while the program is going. Tell us where you're from. I see people from all over. But if you have a question, please use the Ask a Question feature down at the very bottom of your screen. We'll use that for the Q&A at the very end of the program. Right above that, or right to the side of that Ask a Question feature, there is a green button that is a donation button. Right now, that button takes you to the link for the Mark Twain House's portal, for the Travelers Championship and the Birdies for charity program, sponsored by Webster Bank. You click that button, you make a donation, and the museum is matched with a 15% bonus. So it's a way to give us more by, adding that match to your donation. Last year, through the Birdies through Charity event, you helped us raise $25,000. Our goal for this year is $30,000. So any dollar that goes through that button helps us make that goal. So happy to be here with you all. I see Jacques Lamar is in the chat, putting in links. So buy your book through that link that he just popped in there. Our guest tonight is actress and writer Tracy Dawson. Tracy is no stranger to doing what she wants in a man's world, having been a part of the entertainment and comedy scene for years. Tracy began on the main stage of the world-renowned Second City in Toronto. She wrote and acted on the Canadian comedy series called Call Me Fitz. Call Me Fitz. She won the Gemini and Canadian Screen Award for Best Lead Comedic Actress for her work opposing Jason Priestley on Fitz. And she was born in Ottawa, Canada, and is currently based in Los Angeles. Let Me Be Frank is her first book. Our moderator tonight is Chion Wolf. She's the host of Audacious from WNPR's Connecticut Public Radio. She has also produced and hosts The Mouth Off, a storytelling event here at the Mark Twain House in Hartford, and Asking for a Friend, a live advice show at the CT Improv's Underground Comedy Theater. You can learn more about both of them by visiting their websites. So I'm going to bring them both back on and welcome them to the Mark Twain House virtual programming. Thank you both so much for being here. It's so lovely to have you. I'm going to pop off and just let me know when you're ready for Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, my friend. How are you?
Hello. I'm excited. I kind of have I want to do a dance. I'm feeling very excited. Hi, everybody.
Howdy. I'm working on this tie. How's it looking?
A pink tie going on.
Thank you. There's only one way I know how to tie a tie, and it's this way. And I'm not sure.
I think that's the only way I know how to tie a tie as well.
Yeah.
I used to wear a lot of ties when I was in high school and college. I really enjoyed the tie situation. And my dad would be like, "You took one of my good toys."
You're like, well, yeah, because I have good taste in ties.
Oh, yeah, look at the outfit. That's right.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to dress up perfectly for this interview. Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do. Will you please talk about this title?
It might be, my memory is, it's been a few years since I came up with that title, but I believe I came up with the title like really fast, right? And I was like, that's maybe the best thing I've ever come up with. And so I have to come up with a project, along with the subtitle, right? Like, it's a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do. It's called Let Me Be Frank. Like, it always gets a good response. I feel that I've really done my work as a writer. And I just remember sitting on the couch and coming up with that title and being like, full of myself. I'm going to totally say the truth. I was like, that's the fucking greatest title. And so originally it was like a TV idea I thought I might have. I'm a TV writer, and I thought, well, maybe this is an anthology show. And then, it naturally progressed into a book, which I didn't see coming. And what an amazing turn of events, because I didn't think I would be someone who writes books. And I was like, I loved this. I loved every second of this. There was no angst. There was not that much angst in this process, you know?
That's funny because you always, and we're going to talk about like the writing process later after we get to some of the stories from your book. But it seems like all I ever hear about writing a book is it's the hardest thing, period, for everybody all the time.
Listen, I bet you that would be what I would be saying if it was a novel that I was writing, because I can't even imagine. I mean, novel writers, fiction writers, I bow down. I mean, even short fiction, even though I write fiction and television, it's a different, you know what I mean? It's a different medium. And I really like dialogue, and I really like authentic voices, which is why I wrote this book in my authentic, very Tracy voice, because I wanted to talk to you, people reading it. But I would love to climb that mountain. I would like to say right here on the record, I'd love to climb the mountain of trying to write a novel. I think it would break me. I think it would. I really do. But I'm, you know what I mean? I'm a tenacious person, I'm told. So perhaps one day.
Well, we could do like a long form interview where like every 6 months we catch up and we record a conversation about like your mental state while doing this new project.
And then I was just like, Chion.
No,
you know,
no, please like, turn it off. But I have
so long. It's so many words. I love the idea of novellas, but anyway, that's a different conversation.
Well, one thing I want to just get out of the way before we get deeper into this is what this book is not about. There's some misunderstandings about your book that I just want to take a second to clear out of the way.
Well, you know, the book is, I say in the introduction, you know, the book is not about gender identity. You know, it's really specifically stories of women who were told like, no, you can't do that. You can't study that. You can't play that sport. You can't do this thing. Right. And then them going like, fuck you. And, you know, doing what they needed to do to just do what they wanted to do. You know, sometimes it was a self-preservation thing. You know, a lot of the authors who took on like maybe a pseudonym, and sometimes it was access and opportunity, but it certainly is not a book about anybody who was assigned female at birth and then started to identify as a man and then stayed that way. You know, that's a different book. That's not my place to write that book. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. And hopefully the subtitle, you know, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do. Like, hopefully people will get that with that subtitle.
Yeah. Now, when you do this reading in a moment, people will know exactly what I'm talking about. But I do want to hear about why it was so important for you to bring, I don't know, like your whole self. This book could have been really, really serious, and at times it definitely is. But you really committed to bringing snark, humor, profanity to this work, and I want to know why. Why was that important to you? Why'd you make that choice?
Well, I mean, I think I've had the Tracy voice for a long time. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could think back to a very young version of myself, and so it just was really authentically me. I started off as a comedian. I was on the stage at Second City. And well, first of all, at Second City, you're addressing the topics of the day, politics, things that are hot topics, you know, and you're doing it with comedy, you know, and like the Chicago stage and the Toronto version, like they're so good at it. I mean, I hope that we were good at it in the years that I was there. And I think that really planted a lot of stuff for me as I then moved on to stand up, which is talking about my political views or whatever, but like you're doing it in jokes, you're doing it in subversive ways. You're sort of like coming out and being like this sweet, you know, cutie. And then you're saying stuff that's like, you know, trying to get my feminist agenda across, you know what I mean? And so it just felt like I don't want to write a dry academic book. I'm not a dry academic person. And it felt like some books that are on the market that are like about like strong women, they're almost like talked about from like they're standoffish. They're not involved. Like the writer is just like documenting. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm not standoffish. Like I'm hard on your sleeve. I said to my agent very early in the process, I want this book to be like I'm sitting with you in a booth at a diner, and I reach across and I grab your hands and I go, you will not believe this. Like that to me felt like I want to engage people. I want them to feel what I'm feeling, which is, can you believe this? So like, you know, that just felt like the only way to do it. That was just me.
Yeah, and it shines through. So tell us about the first person you're going to be reading from your book, and let's hear it.
Goodness, I'm going to read.
Yeah, just read it. I guess you don't really need to tell us. No, go ahead.
Well, I've been encouraged by Chion, and I'm totally blame you, to read a chapter. And, I timed myself today. I can't not tell the truth, So I just want people to know it's 8 minutes. But listen, it's a great chapter. So I'm going to do my very best.
Drink some water. If you have some snacks, put your feet up.
Yeah. If people have snacks, listen, I'm pro snacks all day, all night. Wake up in the middle of the night, have a snack. Okay, so this is the chapter about Reena, Rusty, Canakogi. All right, how's my framing? How's this?
Real nice.
Born Reena Glickman in Brooklyn, Rusty Canakogi was a redheaded firecracker from the moment she was born in 1935 to the time of her demise in late 2009. As early as age 7, Reena was a bit of a hustler, taking odd jobs anywhere she could get them. She found a sense of belonging amongst society's rejects, the freaks, hustlers, and barkers of the Coney Island underworld. By adolescence, she was the head of a street gang called the Apaches and was given the name Rusty after a local dog, which I'm guessing involved a neighborhood child who began smoking at age 7, observing that Reena and said dog had the same color hair and thus a nickname was born. According to a 1986 profile in Sports Illustrated, Rusty's hero was her brother Charles, who spent hours squeezing hand grips and doing push-ups and then admiring his body in the mirror. Neglected at home, Rusty was a kid looking for attention and trouble. She started using her brother's exercise gadgets and working out. She was the biggest and was determined to be the toughest girl in her neighborhood. Rusty began to derive her self-worth from being a fighter and a protector. As Sports Illustrated tells it, she got a 12-stitch knife wound on her wrist while preventing an armed robbery in a restaurant. She jumped in between a sailor and a soldier brawling at a hotel dance and was pitched off a balcony, suffering a badly sprained back that pained her for the rest of her life. Rusty was troubled, feeling she didn't fit in with most men who wanted her to be typically feminine, which to her meant weak, or with women who she felt resented her for rejecting femininity. Rusty was at sea. In 1955, when she was 20 years old, a neighborhood friend, perhaps sensing that she needed a place to channel her troubled energy, introduced her to Judo. She fell in love instantly. She convinced the Judo instructor at her local YMCA to let her join his class of 40 men. I didn't go for the self-defense, Rusty confessed. I did it to calm down. I interpret that as using Judo and the focus, energy, and camaraderie of training to help with mental health issues. While I can't find anything identifying Rusty as someone who battled anxiety or depression, feeling the need to calm down just says so much about potential internal turmoil. Maybe this Judo class was also the pseudo family she yearned for, a place to belong. And finally, she did belong. Rusty was the first one to show up at class and the last one to leave. She practiced moves on subway platforms, and she even began to apply specific Judo moves to her still fervent need to be the enforcer and protector. One day while riding the subway, she stopped exercising long enough to notice a pervert exposing himself on the train. She drove her knee into his chin, pinned his arm behind his back, jerked the emergency stop cord, and took him to the police station, still unzippered. I'm in love. Some heroes wear capes. Some have ladies size 10.5 triple E feet and a left baby toe that's been broken 13 times. Despite her natural affinity for Judo, there was a shitty kicker. Rusty couldn't compete. I mean, she could barely train. Why? Because she was a woman. Many years later, Rusty identified the one moment in her life that changed everything, the thing that would inevitably lead her to being deemed the mother of women's Judo. In 1959, 24-year-old Reena decided to cut off her hair and tape down her breasts to compete with her all-male club in the New York State YMCA Championships Judo tournament. Before her match, her coach pulled her aside and cautioned her, "Don't attract any attention to yourself. Just pull a draw." As in, don't be too good. Just be okay. That's what we call reverse Miyagiing for all you Karate Kid fans. But skilled and fiery Rusty could not tamp down her greatness. She triumphed in her weight division. When it came time to collect her medal after winning her bout, the suspicious tournament organizer asked her if she was a girl. She nodded, and he stripped her of her medal right then and there. This moment of injustice sparked something in Rusty that would change not only her life, but the lives of countless women and the sport of judo itself. In an article in the New York Times written towards the end of her life, Rusty recalled when that official asked her if she was female. She says, "Had I said no, I don't think I don't think women's judo would have been in the Olympics. It instilled a feeling in me that no woman should have to go through this again. It set her advocacy in motion. She was in for a hell of a fight." But this was a woman who was known to do leg squats on the D train from Brooklyn to Manhattan each morning. She wasn't going to go down quietly. In 1962, at age 27, Rusty felt so limited in how she was able to train in the United States that she moved to Japan. There, women had been training in judo since the 1920s in female-only groups. But guess what? Soon after joining the women's group, she pulverized each of her teammates. She was so out of their league, there was only one solution. For the first time in history, a woman, my girl Rusty, was permitted to train with the men at the Kodokan. She not only found a place to train and acceptance in Japan, but she also met her soulmate, Ryohei Canakogi, a powerful black belt in judo over whom she towered. At one point, hot-tempered Rusty broke her hand fighting with a woman in a barroom bathroom for making a disparaging remark about the Japanese. It was then that she knew she'd found her true love, because instead of scolding her, her future husband advised, quote, "When you punch head, always wrap handkerchief around hand." They were married in 1964 by a Buddhist priest in New York City. By all accounts, Rusty was a funny, brash, loudmouth pain in the ass. Well, thank God. A driving force behind the battle for Title IX, she spent decades fighting for public recognition of women's judo, even going so far as to mortgage her house to sponsor the first women's judo championship at Madison Square Garden in 1980. She got into more than one screaming match with officials about it, and eventually she threatened to sue the Olympic Committee in 1988 to force them to include women's judo. She went on to coach the women's Olympic team that year. Can you say Titan? In a statement issued after her death, fellow pioneer and Women's Sports Foundation founder Billie Jean King said, "Nothing thrilled Rusty more than helping others, especially children. She said that helping a child who thinks he or she can't do something and showing them that they can do it, this was one of the greatest feelings in her life." Reena Rusty Canakogi was a leader, a teacher, a sensei. The Japanese word sensei literally means one who has gone before, a fitting title for this trailblazer. Rusty was the first American woman to earn a 7th degree black belt. She was awarded the Japanese Order of the Rising Sun in 2008 and was buried in the Canakogi family tomb with the epitaph, "American Samurai." In August, oh my gosh, I get a little choked up.
I know, me too.
In August 2009, 3 months before her death, and 50 years after she won it, the YMCA re-awarded her the gold medal that had been stripped from her in that 1959 match. Domo arigato, sensei. Oh my gosh, I'm getting choked up on my own words. It's happening.
Thank you for that reading. Yeah, no, it's been, so of course when I got this book, I inhaled it, and a lot of these stories give me goosebumps, a lot of them make me laugh, etc. But that one just hit like all the points, and it's titling Rusty as sensei, or one who has gone before, is so perfect for, frankly, everybody in this book. I mean, you go back as far as 1478 BCE to today, to people who are still alive today who've dressed like men to do shit that they weren't supposed to do. And I'd like to hear your reflections on, before we move to just a few, touching on some of the few other stories. And by the way, I hope that if you have a question, you are marinating on it, because I can't wait to hear your questions at the end of this. I'd like to hear you talk about the tension of being one who has gone before, right? Because on the one hand, a lot of the people in this book, if not most or all, have suffered in some way or another. And that suffering is then part of what caused them to move so many needles forward, right? And I don't know, I'd like to hear, since you've given this obviously so much thought, that tension, what do you make of that tension of having suffered, but also they've been the shoulders that many of us are standing on?
Sure. I mean, I can't help but in this moment think about, I'm in a very privileged position, but like many of us who are on this talk, but here we are once again fighting for basic human rights in a moment where it feels like the messaging is you're less than human. There's humans and then there's women. It's just like, and so to me, this book is. Rather than the suffering, I think about I connect to the persevering, to the confidence that it takes, right? The belief to take these actions, right? It's so Rusty had a rough time, right? She was neglected at home, but like how she took that and transformed it and was a fighter, man. And I would say I'm a fighter. I'm an Aries. I'm ruled by Mars. I laugh because I'm not like some devout astrology person, and like other people probably go, oh, when they hear that. But Mars is the god of war. And I would say, I sometimes joke that I came out of my mother's body, like a little bit like that. I don't like to back down either. Would I have had the strength to do what Rusty did, or what many of the people in the book did? Catherine Switzer, when she signed up to run the Boston Marathon, she just wanted to run the marathon. And she happened to put down her initials instead of her full name. And they gave her numbers. And she showed up and she ran, and she was attacked and she was assaulted. And she was called, it was ugly. It was violent, right?
Well, I mean, to be fair, if a woman runs for too long, her uterus might fall out. So they were just trying to protect her, Tracy.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, that chapter I learned a lot. I read Catherine's book as research, and the messaging that she got as a young woman was crazy. Your uterus is going to fall out. You're not going to be able to have children. One of the things she says in the book is she has children. She's like, anyone who's had a child knows that the practice of childbirth is so violent and so traumatizing to the human body. Running down the street, running a marathon is nothing compared to like giving birth. What are you talking about? But the fortitude to sit there across from her doctor, who said, "Why does a pretty girl like you want to run?" And to go, who is this guy? And to keep doing it anyway. And same with Rusty. I mean, it's just, her going through that humiliation at that YMCA tournament, again, like she said it in the New York Times article, it is why women's judo in 1988 was in the Olympics. Like those two things they're linked. So you can't help but go, the greatness can come from the suffering, that like you said, the moving the needle, the change. And yeah, as a writer, like I think that it's a beautiful thing for I put myself in this book. I haven't suffered. I haven't been through horrible traumas. But I put myself in my own personal story and how I connected to each of them into the thing, because I feel that connection just from women and people who've been othered their whole lives to be diminished. The fact is I think that we're like the best, like we're better. You guys are just like living in some crazy dream world.
Now, some of these stories, of course, were people following their passions and the things that they love to do. But this next person I want to talk about wore men's clothes to save her life and her family's life. So I'd love to hear you talk about the amazing Ellen Craft.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, when I discovered the story of Ellen Craft, I was shocked and upset that I'd never heard of Ellen Craft. That took me a while to get over. Ellen Craft in 1848. Ellen Craft was a light-skinned mixed-race enslaved woman in Georgia, and her mother was a light-skinned mixed-race enslaved woman, which I say in the book, it's so innocently in all these history books, it just sort of is speaking to a lineage of rape and bondage, and it's so hard and it's so painful because of her lineage. she could pass for white. She and her husband crafted
Nice. The last name is
a plan to escape from Georgia. Ellen posing as a wealthy white male plantation owner, her husband posing as her enslaved valet. And they achieved this in 1848. Apologies. And they took trains and they took ships. And it's an unbelievable, incredible, wild story. And the fact that, my running joke with my friends is my snark is like, I can't believe, there's like this biopic called Ford and Ferrari, but nothing about Ellen Craft. No, that's all right. I mean, I just think, how does every single person not know Ellen and William's story? So that was it was a painful one to write, but it was also like, it filled me up because they triumphed. And in fact, in 1850, they left America because the Fugitive Slave Act was enacted, and their former enslavers were such, I don't even have words that.
Pick one. Yeah, no, I don't know. Not good.
Absolute treacherous fucks. Went so far as to go to the president of the United States and say, we want your help to get our property back. And it was not safe for them to stay even in a free state, because the Fugitive Slave Act said that these hunters could pursue them even in free states. So they moved to England, and they were there for many years until they came back to Georgia. And when they came back, they dedicated their lives to helping newly freed humans and women's rights. And they wrote a book, and it was published in 1860. And so it was, again, it was like, it was hard. Like, I think the book, I like to think that it runs the gamut of emotions. I try to bring humor in. Of course, that chapter doesn't have a lot of humor because I just was authentically telling the story. And mostly I was just like aghast and like amazed, that just everybody should know Ellen and William's story, period.
And the fact that Ellen had to do so much of the heavy lifting, acting like this wealthy plantation owner. She wore her arm in a sling because she couldn't write. She could use it as an excuse not to have to sign stuff or write anything out, which was brilliant. And
it was a brilliant decision to say, look, we don't want to have to sign in at these registries. We don't want there to be a paper trail. I'll be lame. I'll have my arm in a sling, and then that's how they did that. But she had to perform. She had to perform a different race, a different gender, and a wholly different class, right? And so it's like, in those days, women, and especially African-American women, were expected to be invisible. So she was like the most visible, and had to be this person who was supposedly very wealthy and was a wealthy business person. It's
who was the enslaver of her husband. That must have been mind-boggling as they were fleeing for their lives. It's an amazing story, and hopefully there will be so much more coverage of it and discussion of it.
I truly hope that that someone takes on that story, and that it should. It certainly should just be like a movie. Probably would be an absolutely incredible movie. But anyway, yeah, just one of the best.
Yeah, I'm glad you covered it. Now, not all of the people in your book are kick-ass, well-intentioned, selfless humans. One of the more sour characters in your book, the more difficult to read about, was Christian Cadell, aka John Dixon, witch pricker.
Witch pricker. Listen, I had never heard of witch pricking. I learned more than I wanted to learn. The witch trials and the witch hunts were, talk about, when I was writing that chapter, I think I say in the chapter, if I didn't, we edited it out, but like I had to take a lie down. Like I had to lie down at times, because you learn about things, and it's very, very painful and devastating. But witch pricking, during the
back to witch pricking.
Yeah, witch pricking was one of many ways that these men were saying that they could prove that you were a witch. And they would take a long needle and they would stick it into a specific spot where they were looking for the devil's spot. And if you didn't feel it or if you didn't bleed, you were a witch, right? And so Christian Cottle was a Scottish woman and apparently watched this happening and was like, this is all like a pantomime. Like, I mean, I could dress up like that and I could do it. And so she disguised herself she went by John Dixon, and then she took up witch pricking. Now, it's terrible. You know what I mean? It's like this, special place in hell for, I think I say in the chapter, talk about women not supporting other women. Yikes. But I do also want to examine, or at least not leave out the possibility that this would have been a terrifying time in history, something that I can't even, it's pretty scary right now, but look, that was insane off the charts, right? And was there a self-preservation quality to Christian's story, which is, well, if I'm a man and a witch pricker, maybe I'm protecting myself from being tortured and murdered. So I just tried to examine that in the chapter because it's certainly, was it opportunism? Was it ambition? Making your living in this grotesque way, but also, was there a self-protection aspect to that? But that was definitely a crazy thing to discover. And look, I wanted equal opportunity. Like, why should a book like this be about all people who were, great or good, or, it's sort of like, in Hollywood, they always talk about how they want the anti-heroine. We've got the anti-heroes, we've got the Tony Sopranos and the Walter Whites. It's like, we want some anti-heroines, right? So then I would write something with a character, like a female lead character who was like an anti-heroine, and they would be like, whoa, that's pretty dark. And so you go, oh, so it's not what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And, sometimes I kind of want to lean into when there's people that are a little bit less like unsavory, right? Because it's like, she did what she wanted to do. Even we don't have to like what she did. We don't have to admire her, but she still took her life into her own hands at a time when that was just still really unheard of, right? To just be like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do this fucked up thing.
Eventually she was exposed because she accused a man named John Hay, who was an influential court messenger. So he had high status and everybody respected him. And they were like, well, this can't be true, that John, because he's a stand-up guy. And so she's deported to Barbados, never heard from again. My favorite part of this is that you point out everything she did was still considered a lesser offense than being a witch, which was an entirely made up thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's funny is they were like, wait a second, she accused the wrong guy. He's a stand-up guy. Maybe this is all made up. You think? Maybe this is all made up.
Like, let's send it to Barbados.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Barbados then was like it is now,
like,
but
you're getting shipped off to Barbados, which
doesn't sound bad to me.
Yeah, well, I think the documentation was like that it was fever. Like it was filled with plague and fever. Like,
well, that does sound bad to me. Yes.
I think she probably didn't last very long, but I don't know all the details about that. The information is, and the documentation is definitely spotty. I wish I knew more. My gosh, right? About like, what was her background and how did this fully come to be? But yeah, I just wanted to include people that weren't just like all nice and pretty with a bow or a bow tie, as it were.
Very good. Nicely done. One person I really want to talk about is someone who is very much alive today. They were born in 1990. Maria Tor Pacquiao, aka Genghis Khan.
Oh my God. Everything. Well, I'm in love with Maria, and Maria, listen, oh gosh, there's a connection to my hometown, which is Toronto, but I'm skipping ahead because I get very excited. But Maria was born in Northwest Pakistan in a tribal area in 1990. And, it was kind of a seething area. and not super known for the advancement of women. And she was a little girl. She would look out the window and she'd see boys running and playing outside, and girls were not allowed to leave the house in her community, in her community, without a male accompaniment, right? And so she didn't listen to that. And she says in her book, I soon realized, there's no gray area for someone like me. There's no such thing as a tomboy. Like, it's like you're inside, and that's it. Like, there's no sports and there's no playing. And so from a very, very young age, she tells it in her book, her great book, A Different Kind of Daughter. She, as a little kid, she cut off her own hair. She took all of her dresses, she put them in their cooking pit outside, and she set them on fire. And her father, her parents sound amazing. And she was very lucky to be born to forward-thinking parents, especially, the patriarch. Her father believed in education of girls. And he recognized something in Maria that he knew from his sister. And he'd seen it get squashed in his sister. And he said, you know what? I'm gonna let her live as my son now, because she wants to run and play and she wants to be outside and she's active and she's vibrant. And he said, okay, your new name is Genghis Khan, which is pretty dope. And so she lived as Genghis Khan when she was a little boy, so that she could just be outside and play. And she would get into lots of fights. And he finally was like, oh, she's getting in a lot of tumbles. He showed her the movie Rocky, became her favorite movie, which is amazing. But there was no boxing. There was no boxing gyms where they lived. And so he introduced her to weightlifting. She excelled at weightlifting. She was still going as Genghis Khan, but it was boring. So then one day she discovered a very popular sport in Pakistan at the time, squash. Well, she started off training with the boys, and they all thought she was a boy. And she was probably, I think she said she was the biggest one in her group, like she had muscles. She was like a big girl, And then they found her out. They all turned against her. They called her a slut. It was terrible and awful. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to let this stop me. She then became basically the highest ranking female squash player in Pakistan. She became a national hero, but she was also a threat because the Taliban, she describes in her book that her bloodlines are sort of mixed with the Taliban. So she comes from the same region. Okay. And so when she was gaining all these accolades in 2007, she was invited to appear with President Musharraf, I believe I'm saying that name correctly, and was in the newspaper with a picture. She was the first girl to play with t-shirts and shorts. If you're an inspiration, if you're moving the needle, you're also a target. You're also a threat. And so the death threat started for her and her family. And it got scary because she also would go to these places and train and thought she's putting all these people at her gym at risk. And so she stayed at home. Like she was going out, she was winning awards. She was playing all over. She would go to the airport. She would go and she would come back. She was winning money and accolades. But then at a certain point, the threat got so bad that she stayed at home. She turned her mattress on her side and she continued to train at home in her bedroom. Come on. Eventually her dad was like, you got to get out of here. She's like, I'm not even winning. I'm not winning anymore. Like my muscles, I'm losing it. He's like, it's not about playing anymore. It's about your life. And she started to email people all over America, all over Canada, all over Europe, and said, I'm this, I'm that. I've won these things. I'm a tribal girl. I reached #1 in Pakistan. And for 2 years, she heard nothing until Jonathan Power, the great squash champion from Toronto, Ontario, answered one of her emails after 2 years. He flew her to Toronto. He said, you're going to work in my gym and I'm going to train you. She got back into shape. I mean, it's an incredible story. I'm telling you everything, but listen, it's still worth getting the book because it's way better in the book than what I'm telling you right now. No, I mean, her story is phenomenal. And, she identified, like she dressed as a boy and disguised herself as a boy for a short period of time. And then, but her identity as a woman and playing sports and staying alive and getting out of where she lived and everything, like it's all linked to her womanness. And so oh my goodness, I love her. I'd love to meet her. I think that she's an absolute inspiration, what she achieved and what she survived.
Yeah, her book again is called A Different Kind of Daughter. It was released in 2016. You can find her on Facebook with her 122,000 followers, Maria Tour Pacquiao, and so she's in your book along with so many others. And I appreciate you it was very hard for me to narrow down the people I really wanted to talk about in this book, because there's something like 33, 35 people you talked about. We cannot move on without talking about the writers. Who are scattered throughout your book, and also in a section called Anonymous Was a Woman. In the introduction to the book, you talk about a Jezebel article by Catherine Nichols, Homme de Plume, what I learned sending my novel out under a male name. And that really sort of launched that idea. Maybe you could talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, there was something that happened to me many years ago where an executive had, for TV writing, had asked me what shows I liked that they had, maybe I would be interested in writing on. And I had said, I like these shows. And then that executive said, well, there's no female needs on those shows. So, and I was like, whoa, like it felt so shocking that someone would say to me, well, there's jobs available, but we've met our quota for women. And so we don't need you. And so that sort of planted something. And then when I read Catherine's article about sending out her book under her real female name and then sending it out again under the name George, and how much more positive response she got when she did that, and what year was that? I think it was 2015, 2016, oh lordy, 2017. I don't remember, somewhere in there. Recently, you guys, recently. And so when I saw that and I thought about what happened to me, and I just was like, I wonder, because part of me, when that executive said that to me, for 5 seconds, I was like, should I disguise myself? These are pretty small, you know what I mean? I don't really have cheekbones, should I? It's 5 seconds. I didn't really think about doing that because it sounded like a lot of work, and frankly, I'm lazy. But water break. So it was just hearing these things, reading these things, and going I wonder how many people. I wonder how many women through time, if it's still happening with Catherine Nichols and her book, I wonder how many people have done this, right? Disguise themselves in some way. And that was really just got it all going, right? That was just the snowball, because I really didn't think I was going to find that many people. I really didn't. And then I found a lot of people. And when I started to find so many women writers, I said, well, this has to be its own chapter, sort of a big compendium chapter in the middle of the book, which I decided to call Anonymous Was a Woman, because of the idea that Virginia Woolf posits in A Room of One's Own, which is, it's not true, but she says, one would think that everybody who's ever signed their work anonymous might have been a woman, and I just was like, ooh, that's such a compelling, sensational idea, even if it's not true. So I don't think a lot of people, every single person that I know that's super well-read, and everybody I know is more well-read than I am, when I ask them, did you know that Jane Austen never, in her lifetime while she was living, only wrote anonymously, never used her name? And every single person said, I didn't know that. I said, did you know that the Bronte sisters, while they were alive, they only published using male names? They said, I didn't know that. And I said, well, there's something juicy there, right? There's something there that's oh, well, I'm no expert. I didn't know, I'm not the most, I haven't read every book on the planet, but I just was something's there. We got to do an author chapter about all the people who've done that, something like that, right? Which is it self-preservation? Is it about sales? Joanne Rowling, about all of it is, even if it's about sales, even if it's about it's still baked into misogyny. It's still anti-woman. You know what I mean? Even if they're well, we want the wizard book to sell to the boys and we can't use a woman's name. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of when's it going to be enough? You know what I mean?
We were talking earlier about a friend of yours who has the book and showed it to his daughter. So would you say that this book would be good for kids?
Well, listen, I did not, obviously there's swears in the book.
So many swears.
There's not so many swears.
There are so many swears, but they're perfect.
Listen, there's swears. They're very appropriate when they're used.
Yes.
Don't scare people off. There's some swears.
There's a swear in the title, Tracy.
I don't consider shit a swear. I'm just gonna go on record. Not a cuss word.
A whole different interview. All right.
I think I saw like on some, cop show or legal show on like prime time, like NBC television, and they said shit. And I was like, it's official. It's not a swear anymore. Anyway, it's not written for kids, but it's not so adult that cool parents couldn't show it to their cool kids. And to be honest, when I got that message that his daughter was reading it, I think I might have welled up, because obviously I want people to know about these women. I want people to share these stories about, look what these people had to do just to thrive, to play sports, to run a marathon. They wanted to go to school. They wanted to, you know what I mean? Like, they wanted you to leave them the F alone. I didn't say the F word. I said F. But anyway, and so to me, like, that's a beautiful, I would love that. And one of the trade reviews said, one of the lines in the trade review was like, this would be so great for teenagers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. It's fun. It's entertaining while it's enlightening. So it's like, I hope that would be a dream. Like, you know what I mean? To like, obviously it's like, you're not going to tuck in your 5-year-old with this book, but hey, maybe start them early, guys. Let's start it early.
Well, one of the other things that I keep coming back to with this book, and with all the research that you had to do, you did research in which there were plenty of answers for you. There was research, like we were talking about earlier, there was research where, the information kind of falls off and you couldn't find out much more. And to consider all that we as a species have missed out on, all the advances that haven't been made because these people had to do this crap just to exist, just to do the things they love or they care about. That to me is like a really dark current underneath all of this. We've missed out on so much.
It's a real gut punch. It really is. And when you look at someone like Florence Hines, this isn't just about women being left off of history pages. I say very early in the book, the people that wrote history are, famously like old white dudes, right? And so it's like the idea of people who got left out of the archives, who got left off the pages, who aren't, the biopics aren't being made about them. It's women, it's Black and brown people, it's queer people. And then you think about, like, Florence Hines is someone who was a sensation on the variety stage and who was part of a company that was turning the minstrel format on its ass. And she was a male impersonator. And she was, the quotes, the minimal amount of quotes that we can find, it makes it sound like she was literally like the top of her craft, like unparalleled for years, right? But the documentation and the stuff that was preserved and archived is so sorely lacking that it hurts, because it's like she was a star. She was popular with white audiences, with Black audiences. She was a crossover talent, whatever that means. But she was popular with everybody. But why wasn't the care there to tell her story, to preserve her story? Well, we know why. And it's shameful. And there was another point that I was going to, in Mary Edwards Walker, right? She's the sole recipient of the Medal of Honor. I talk about her in the book because she didn't disguise herself as a man, but she almost exclusively wore men's clothing, because she said, I don't dress in men's clothing, I dress in my clothing. And she was the second American woman to graduate from medical school, and she became a surgeon, and she went down when the Civil War started, and she said, I want to help, I want to serve. And they laughed at her and they told her to get the fuck out of her office. I said the F word. And I say in the chapter, just imagine all the innovation and the greatness and the achievement, innovation that we missed out on, because they were like, we don't even want to hear it from you. We don't want to hear it. A Black woman in the 1800s invents something. We don't want to give you a patent. We don't want to hear about it. I'm like, talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. You know what I mean? Like, so it's depressing. You know what I mean? And so I'm glad I got to write about Florence Hines, even though I don't know when she was born. We don't know exactly when she died. Like there's too much missing, and it's just shameful. That's the only word for it, you know?
And that translates into now, who else aren't we knowing about? Who else doesn't have access? Who else can't offer humanity the best of all they have because of. Before we go to Q&As, I just want to tell you, I really look forward, Tracy, to your book completely exploding all onto bestseller lists everywhere, because every single one of these stories made me feel challenged. They made me laugh and gave me a deeper appreciation of how important it is to get in some, as John Lewis said, good trouble, necessary trouble, until we don't have to anymore, until frankly all marginalized people can be their whole powerful, imperfect, authentic selves without changing a damn thing without changing anything that they don't want to in order to achieve it. And so I want to personally say thank you so very much for this book, Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do. Thank you.
What a beautiful, thank you so much for that. You just summed it up. You're so good at talking.
Thanks. Maybe I should look into some sort of career on this.
I think you're both so great at talking. This has been wonderful. So wonderful. And we have lots of questions from the audience. So I hope you're ready. We'll start with, all right, this first one. In 2022, do women still have to dress like men to do stuff they weren't supposed to do? Or can they/you do it dressed as women? Or are there other sleights of hands that they need to do?
Yes. Sleights of hand, I would say yes.
That's a good way to put it.
There's a lot of sleights of hand, I think, on a daily basis. Yeah. Because you're navigating in a world and you're always aware that you could be unsafe at any moment. So there's that. That's a really interesting way that you put it. In terms of dressing like a man, I mean, I kind of take Mary Edwards Walker, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker thing, which is some days I feel like dressing like a teenage boy, and I do. And some days I really like being femme. And I love that I can do whatever I want. We're very privileged in this country in some ways. And so I'm certainly not the expert who has to, dress in which way and present and perform in which way. I certainly am not an expert in that area, but we're definitely still navigating a ton of bullshit. Did you like my eloquent answer? Listen.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I also think when you going back to the names, I think that's something that a lot of women still do. Like my name, Jody, is male or female. And it's amazing how many emails cold call emails I get. And it's like, Mr. DeBrine. I'm like, thanks, but it's Ms. And it's just like, they just assume. And it's just like, well, okay.
Oh my gosh, that makes me think I was on a call, like a customer service call, and they kept on calling me Mrs. Dawson. And I was like, I really got to stop. I mean, I don't know why it bothered me so much. Like it's 2022. Like your default is Mrs. I can see that in my mother's time, the default, you know what I mean? Maybe in the 60s, 70s. And I said, I got to tell, I'm not Mrs. They probably looked at my age and went, surely she's married. And I go, well, guess what? It's 2022 and no. But anyway.
Yeah. So this next question is this possibly a first book in a series?
Well, I have my second book idea and proposal and everything, and it is not the same subject, but I would say side by side, you'd be like, they are siblings. Like they are, siblings. And so fingers crossed, because I'm very excited about this book, which I'm not going to tell you about, but it would be a dream I think that they would go hand in hand.
So that just is cues for all of us to buy this book, to put it on the bestseller list so that we can help her get her second book, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all looking at the numbers. What are the numbers? But that said, listen, as much as I obviously am going to write this next book and it's going to happen, I'm still also just in awe that this happened. I mean, it's gorgeous. I'm in awe.
It's really nice too. It's a good book.
Look at it. It's so beautiful.
You can smack the patriarchy with it.
Listen, when I took it out of the package, when they sent me my very first copy, the first thing I did was I went, oh my goodness. And then I said, I could fend off an attacker because it has heft. And I like that it has heft because that means like I have heft and these women have heft. And to me, it's like energetically, it's kind of gorgeous.
Yep.
Next question.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess kind of based off that too as well, were there any stories you wish you were able to include, but you had to cut?
You know, the things that we cut, I really feel like it was right to cut them because where I started in the beginning of my research and where I ended, I learned a lot. And when you learn stuff, it's like when documentary filmmakers start, they start with an idea and they start with, they think the movie's going to be that. But I really love it when they let the story tell them what it's going to be, like to be open to having your mind changed and to learning stuff and to go, oh, these couple of people here, there's no evidence that this was a disguise and that they were, these people seem to me what would be a modern transgender man. And so those, a couple of people from the very beginning, from years ago, they don't exist in the book now because that's not this book, you know, and that's not my story to tell, as I said at the beginning. And, you know, and I thought it was like a beautiful journey, really, to go like, when you learn more, you know more, right? And so that's that.
All right. So also about leaving things out, what swears are in the book and which ones did you leave out? Please provide graphic examples.
Wait, which squares?
Swears. Swear
Oh,
words.
swears. It's just so funny calling them swears. It's funny. What swears? Well, shit's in the title, though I have gone on record that I don't consider that a full swear. There's a couple of F's. There's nothing like asshole. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that's like, oh no, like they say that in England. You can't say that. Do you know what I mean? Not that one. Yeah. Nothing like that. It's nothing crazy. It's just, you know, if your kid was walking through the living room and you're watching a Netflix comedy special, probably would hear a couple of those words.
May I ask something that, like, I don't know why I'm asking. I'm the interviewer. The artwork in this book is flipping beautiful. And I need you to talk real quick about Tina Burning.
Okay,
who made this?
Tina Burning did not only the art, she did all the individual hand lettering, right? So that, like, all this lettering, I still pinch myself. Legitimately, I pinched myself that Tina agreed to do the art for this book. And you know what? None of these photos that we're showing on the screen are going to do it justice. Like, look at this. This is Hatshepsut, the Egyptian pharaoh. I mean, takes my breath away. Everything she did was watercolor and ink and paint. She's a well-known painter in Berlin, Germany. There's a lot of people out there who illustrate books. You know what I mean? We were so fortunate that, I mean, it's art, right? Like it's not simply illustration for my money. Not that I'm some expert on the big difference, but she also proposed, she initially wanted me to be on the cover. And so she did this portrait of me and she proposed this to the publishers who said no. Listen, they said, we love that portrait. Let's put it in the back. You know, let's put it next to your about the author, right? I also love that I'm not going to lie. I like how slender I look. I'm not going to lie. That's terrible. Am I a feminist?
That's the patriarchy.
It is the patriarchy. But she did that portrait and I was like, oh my goodness. She's a genius. Like, that's all I can say is, like, I've seen what she's done and I've seen how fast she does it and how beautiful it is and how organically she worked. And it's, to me, it's the highest blessing, frankly, that she said yes. Like, I just feel like it was like a sign, like, this book is meant to be. And it's, you know, my editor early on said, I want this to be a beautiful object. And my first reaction was, I'm a writer. I want to write a great book. And then I'm like, no, she was right. This is a beautiful object. You know, look at the spine. It's gorgeous. Sorry, people are going to think I'm a goofball, but her name's Tina Burning, and she's on Instagram. She's got 140,000 followers, a lot more than me. And we're going to do an Instagram live. This is a hot ticket item, hot off the press. She and I are going to do an Instagram live on Friday. I'm going to say it's probably like the 27th, and we're going to be posting about it on our Instagram and stuff because people are obsessed with her. And so I said, you know what, let's talk about the like collaborating, because it was such a beautiful, like such a beautiful time collaborating together, like how we work together. And I thought, oh, we could do like an interview, like we could interview each other. So that's what we're going to do on Instagram live.
Beautiful.
I just put your Instagram in the chat so people can go follow you.
At Dawson Tracy, right?
Yes.
Not Tracy Dawson.
Not Tracy Dawson.
Dawson Tracy.
Tracy.
Dawson Tracy. Yes.
Also on Twitter, in case you care, at Dawson Tracy. I'm consistent if nothing else.
Yes. I also put Tina's website in the chat so people can go check her out there.
You can buy prints, not from this book, but you can buy prints of hers. I don't know about the art in the book. I'm not the expert on how that all works with the rights and stuff. So please don't ask me.
That's fine. But this is a great segue into our next question. Are there any women artists featured in your book?
Say it again.
Are there any woman artists featured in your book?
Women artists. Oh my God. Literally, like, I wrote this book and I have to like look at the table of contents. Because aren't we all artists, guys? Okay.
Huh. I don't know if there are. I'm looking at my notes on all of them.
I mean,
that'll be the third book.
It really depends. In terms of a visual artist, that's it. Okay, so here's the thing that I will say. Again, this is a hot tip. There's gonna be a lot of artists in the next book. That's all I'm gonna say. No, I mean there's a lot more writers, and you know what? Tarpe Mills is not only a comic book creator, a comic book writer, but she's also an illustrator, and she's in the book. Yes, there's an artist in the book. And a lot of people, she changed her name to be more masculine because she didn't think people want to read comics by a woman. This was in the 1940s. And she was the creator, writer, and illustrator of the first female superhero 8 months before Wonder Woman came on the scene. I love her chapter. We have to wrap up. We can't talk about it too much, but the art in that chapter and her story and the fact that her legacy has kind of been lost. Again, it's another one of those, what? So I'm hoping, I don't know. I'm told that LitHub is going to publish that chapter at the end of the month. They're going to do like an excerpt, and they're going to use the Tarpe Mills chapter. And I'm so pleased about it because I want as many people as possible to know about her and how extraordinary and sensational she was. And then she kind of got lost in the ether.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, do you? I know we're at the 8 o'clock, but we have 2 questions left unanswered. Do you want to answer them? Or are you ready?
I'm totally okay. I mean, okay. Part of me is like I'm nervous about overstaying my welcome, but
listen, no. You're welcome all the time.
Well, Jody, you're not the other. Maybe the people who are like, I gotta go get my dinner or something.
You know what? They're all watching this from home. They can pop it in the microwave and come right back and continue listening.
Microwave.
Right?
My dog is certainly looking at me, going. But I'm totally happy. Let's hear it.
This one says, I give you credit for being upbeat. If I were a female, I would be screaming out the window. I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. Why aren't you?
I am every day. That's what I do to wake up my vocal cords. I am literally filled with rage every single day. But what am I going to do? I'm going to write a book about it. I got it published by a pretty big publishing house. And I'm going to be funny because that is my experience with helping the medicine go down, which is helping people understand that these people existed, that their stories should have more attention. And in terms of someone trying to take away, rights to my own body. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe it. Right. So it's like, someone said like despair is very tempting, right? Despair is very tempting. It's really hard. People are like, well, so what gives you hope? I'm like, if I'm honest with you, I don't have a ton of hope right now, but I believe in myself. And I know that I'm a badass motherfucker who like does not give up. And like everybody I know who identifies as female and femmes are like that. And so I can only say, oh my God, every day I'm filled with rage. So don't you worry, question asker. I'm filled with rage.
Yeah, my colleague and I were in Missouri when all the news came down about Roe versus Wade, and we were sitting there being like, we are not in a good state for this. We're just full of rage. But like, what else could, like, we're just gonna go on and like do what we're here for and all these things. But like, I feel like it's just part of a female existence at the moment to be full of rage.
Yeah, I mean, it's I feel like it's a human. It feels like everybody's angry because I'm thinking, yeah, we women are angry, we queer people are angry, Black people are angry, Indigenous people are angry, trans, non-binary people are angry, white men are angry, everybody's angry, and it's like everybody, except for the white men, has the right to be, right? I mean, so what do we do with all this anger? And it feels like in the last couple of years, I don't know, 6 years or so, rounding up, it seems like this has been a revealing time. In terms of how we all process our fear, right? Because anger is a fearful reaction, among others. And that's a whole another 18-hour conversation between all of us. But it's been really revealing to see how we all cope with fear and anger. And I really appreciate that one of the ways you're working through yours is by writing and letting us know that things were not always the way they are now, and that we have work to do collectively.
Right. And then we can take I can personally take inspiration from these stories. You know what I mean? It feels, unfortunately, very timely. But the people in this book, you know, they in their way took matters into their own hands, but what they did with their bodies, you know, literally. And yeah, I mean, I can get inspiration from that. You know, given the day, whatever time of day it is, I can be completely beaten down by something, or I can use it as fuel to be like, no way, man. Like I say at the end of the introduction, we always get up. We always get up. And I feel that on a micro level with myself and my own personal defeats or mental health issues. And I also feel it on a big, like, the community, the tribe, the people who have been othered for so long, and we're not just gonna lay down and take it. I know that.
Yeah, this is such a good book. I am like a third of the way through because I just got it this week for this event. But it's such a good book. It's so inspiring, and even the stories, as you say, of like the other side, your witch pricker and everything like that. Like, you know, that's maybe not somebody to aspire to be like, but at the same time, it's such a cool story and like how complex everybody is in all of these things. And I do encourage everybody to read this book, buy it from our Mark Twain House shop so that we get a cut of it, and support Tracy. And it's signed when you buy it through us, unlike when you buy it through Amazon.
Did you say it's signed?
Signed.
Where'd you get the sign? Did I send some book plates? We should talk about that when the cameras are not on, because I don't remember.
You did?
I think I might need to send you those book plates.
Okay. Well,
very happily. Very happily.
What I'm told is that it's signed with book plates. So yes.
It will be if it's not now.
It will be. So thank you again, both of you, for joining us this evening.
This was so great.
So great.
So much.
Check out the Instagram Live coming up with Tracy and Tina, because that sounds fascinating. I know I will be watching. And I hope to see you both at the Mark Twain House soon, dressed as a man or a woman, or however you feel like. So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Lots of love.